New Delhi has submitted an application to the International Seabed Authority to explore the seabed in the Indian Ocean. Now, India had applied for the license in January and a decision is expected by the end of this year. Why does India want to explore the Indian Ocean seabed, and which are the other countries in this race? Joining me to discuss this is Commander Arnab Das, Director of the Maritime Research Center. Commander Das, welcome to the News9 Plus show.
Thank you for having me here.
Why is India involved in a race to the seabed?
There are multiple factors. First of all, definitely the resources that are available. I mean, whether it is energy security or various other, I mean, from the strategic security perspective also, we need to build those capabilities to be able to, maintain our presence in the underwater.
Right.
I mean, 6 times more resources for the EV is available in the deep oceans.
Right.
So definitely
Electric vehicles.
Yes. And also, the polymetallic nodules. I mean, from an energy security perspective, there are methane and so many other things that are available. And Government of India is definitely focusing in the Indian Ocean region now.
Yes.
Because we have not explored it so much earlier, but now there is so much to be done. So definitely there's a very focused approach towards it.
So, I've been hearing about polymetallic nodules ever since I was in school, Commander Das. And, I know the fact that they are potato-sized lumps of minerals that are found on the seabed at depths between 4 and 6 kilometers.
Yes.
Explain to our viewers the complexity of getting those nodules from the seabed. I mean, I would argue of developing something like a vacuum cleaner and running it on the seabed and sucking it up and using the minerals. But tell us why it's not as easy as it sounds.
There are 2 parts to it. I mean, one is the exploration and the second is the exploitation.
Right.
So, I mean, as you know, the tropical waters.
Yes. Which is the
in
Indian
your
Ocean,
previous
the
program
warmer waters.
also.
Yes.
The tropical waters, I mean, the warm waters as we call it, the sonars that are used, I mean, sonars were typically designed and developed during the Cold War period for the Greenland, Iceland, UK gap.
Yes.
I mean, those are the temperate and the polar region.
Right.
The same sonar, when you bring it here, gives you 60% degraded performance.
Yes.
So, right from an exploration perspective itself, there's a massive challenge that, to be able to find. The second aspect is the viability of such an activity.
Right.
I mean, experts say that if you do not have enough resources to be able to exploit it for at least 15 to 20 years, it's not economically viable.
Right. By viability, you mean that your return on investment should be higher.
Return on investment.
Yes.
Because when you set up this whole thing, it's a serious issue.
Right. How many billions of dollars are we talking of here? How much would it?
I don't want to guess a number.
Right.
I mean,
but it would be in the billions.
It would be a very massive number.
And it would be. Is it more complicated than oil exploration or digging for oil?
Far more.
And why is that the case?
Because as you mentioned, breaking it up into smaller parts. What people are looking at is, because you have to bring it out and in large numbers.
Right.
So what they are looking at it is crushing it into into smaller parts and making a sludge which can be sucked up.
Right.
So that itself, will require a different way of working.
So the difference between oil exploration and polymetallic nodules is that the nodules are small, but they're scattered on the seabed. Whereas oil, you just hit that thing and you can pump out the oil.
Pump it out.
Right.
So they are, for both, rare earth metals and this, they are looking at it to be pulled out.
Right.
So that requires a very different capability.
Yes.
Then also there is now a concern. International Seabed Authority is also fighting an issue of environmental sustainability.
Yes.
So unless that is established, and there are certain countries, which are opposing this.
Right.
When people who missed the bus
in
the beginning in terms of this whole seabed mining requirement.
So why are those countries opposing the seabed mining? Is it because
they were not part of the initial thing. Now, they want to, make sure that others also don't get it.
Right.
So they are opposing, you have messed up the earth enough now.
Yes. And now you're going to the
mess
seabed.
Up the waters.
Right.
And because it will be very difficult to, because see, in land, it remains contained in a smaller area.
Yes.
But in the oceans, it will spread.
Right.
And
the
it will be very difficult. The damage will be far more
widespread.
So it will be extremely difficult to ensure. And when we look at environment impact assessment, there are multiple dimensions to it. I mean, one is, which is not very much well known, is the acoustic habitat degradation.
Right.
Because underwater, speed of sound is 5 times faster.
Yes.
So, and the underwater creatures, I mean, largely
Yes.
the marine mammals and such creatures are dependent on sound for biologically critical functions.
Right,
So, if you create a lot of noise because of these human activities,
Absolutely.
it will cause a serious environmental damage.
Serious
so,
environmental
that's something
damage,
we need to factor.
Right,
So,
and-
even the whole environment impact assessment
Yes.
has to be looked at it from a very different dimension.
Right, absolutely. But Commander Das, also the fact that let's talk about the dragon in the room. And China has been very actively scouring the Indian Ocean region. They've been sending these surveillance ships, spy ships, oceanographic survey vessels. Tell us about the missions of these ships. I mean, are they there, apart from the missile test, we know that, but are they also there for extracting resources from the seabed?
Absolutely. I mean, that's what I've been talking about when I say underwater domain awareness. The pooling of resources and synergizing of efforts is something we need to look at very seriously, because these are very high stake and
Right.
high resource intensive initiatives.
Yes.
So, unless all the four stakeholders, whether it
Right.
is strategic security, blue economy, sustainability and environment, sustainability and climate change,
Yes.
and the digital or the science and technology effort,
Right.
unless all of them come together,
Right.
it won't make sense, or it will not be optimum enough.
All the stakeholders need
all
to
the
come
stakeholders
together.
need to come together.
Right.
So China is trying to do that. See,
Yes.
even mapping the underwater space.
Yes.
For AUV development,
Right.
we need very high quality and high resolution images.
Right.
Or high charts.
Right.
And China is doing that.
Right.
So whether it will be used for deploying AUVs to find resources.
Yes.
Or for strategic security deployment. Once the country has the data,
Yes.
it's
It's
their
dual
asset.
use technology.
It is certainly
Right.
dual use.
And
Anything
the
underwater is dual
data
use.
is also dual use.
Dual-
But my last question to you, Commander Das, is that what would you expect from the new government? The seabed, the underwater domain has not been a very high priority region for the government. But given the factors that you just explained to us, the fact that China is also involved in this race in our backyard, what would you want the new government to do in terms of policy, in terms of bringing all these multiple stakeholders together?
See, I want to highlight Honorable Prime Minister, moment he came to power.
Yes.
Way back in May 2015, he announced the Sagar Vision.
Sagar Vision, yes.
What is Sagar Vision? I mean,
Right.
security and growth for all in the region.
Right.
So, both security and economy
Right.
or economic growth has been put on the same priority level.
Right.
Number one. And secondly, he also talked about leadership role for India in the region.
Yes.
So, you can only look at leadership role if you have the capacity and capability.
Right.
And if you can support the other nations in the region in terms of their capacity and capability
Yes.
building. And every time, whether Prime Minister has spoken at the UN or every
Yes.
time he has repeated this priority of the oceans, and even in the G20 declaration also they have used the word ocean economy. They have not used the
Ocean
word
economy.
blue economy.
Right.
The blue economy policy is almost ready, as I understand.
Right.
In the last 3 years, they have debated the draft
Yes.
blue economy policy. So the government is definitely looking at it, but being given the size of our country and the
Yes.
various
And our
factors,
priorities.
we
Right.
need to. But my submission to the government, I mean, the next government, which
Yes.
is going to be coming soon, would be that capacity capability building should be the highest priority.
Right.
Making a declaration is one aspect.
Yes.
But to be able to make sure that we achieve that,
Right.
and the kind of underlying capacity and capability, and particularly when we say underwater,
Yes.
acoustic capacity capability building is the key.
Right.
I mean, even under the MDA, Maritime Domain
Yes.
Awareness, the underwater part is completely not seen.
Absolutely.
So
the underwater
we need
part
to
is not
focus.
seen. But thank you very much, Commander Das, for alerting us about this. The fact that we need to build up capability and capacity in the underwater domain for the reasons that you mentioned.